Hey, everybody, welcome to Crackpot, the podcast where each and every week we dive into a different conspiracy theory and we also discuss the merits and or the demerits of each. We are your hosts. I'm Tim.
And I'm Zachary.
Welcome back,
Thank
Zach.
you. Yes. Hold on. What's the next line? How are...
You.
How are you? How are you, Tim?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Just well?
Just well and good and great and thank you.
Yeah.
It's been a while. It's been a while,
doesn't it?
Since we have done one of my favorites, a good old-fashioned grab bag.
Not only that, but also a good old-fashioned alien-themed conspiracy theories, whatever you want to say. There's a lot kind of to unpack.
There's a lot kind of percolating around in the news these days.
None of which seems to be terrestrial in nature, shall we say.
Shall we?
Yeah, would say that.
Okay. None of which seems to be terrestrial in nature.
None of which seems to be terrestrial.
Back to you, Jim. Anyway, so a lot of weird stuff going on, a lot of crazy things happening, but let's okay, you know what? Before we go any further, let's just mention that I think it was our year in review. We just kind of obviously recapped the wonderful wild year that was 2020, but also we talked about just how much alien and UFO news there was, and legitimate news, not like, you know,
UFO.com.
Right, exactly. It just seemed like the year for stuff to start coming out.
It did. And so to that end, it's almost like a bunch of this stuff got swept under the rug. And now it's kind of like, all right, well, 2020's done. What happened
again? Are we still going to be talking about that? Is that stuff still out there? Yeah, it is. Okay, so let's go back to a simpler time.
When was the Oumuamua show? Not to jump too far into the script here.
I think it was 27. No, it couldn't have been 2017 because we didn't start in 2017.
I wasn't even born yet. Yeah.
I think it was the second season. You know, we could have potentially looked this up before we hit record.
2019.
Yeah, just go back, look up Oumuamua.
Yeah.
It sounds exactly like it's spelled like it sounds.
And if you're Tim, I don't even want to know.
No,
how
I
that
think
looks.
there's like a J and an R in there somehow. Oumuamua. It is, I think it means the messenger.
So I'm not exaggerating here. That show, Oumuamua, was legitimately one of our best, like, sneaky good shows. Because, you know, I remember you coming over and being like, hey, there's this weird, you know, Oumuamua thing. And I was like, weird. And then you laid it out, and I'm like, oh, wait a second. This is actually really super compelling.
Right. And to peel back the curtain a little bit, I mean, there's obviously an art and a science to naming the episodes. I mean, if you do something called Oumuamua, and if no one's ever heard of it, you're not going to get as many clicks as if you do, say, I don't know, Martin Luther King Jr. assassination, right? Everyone has heard of the guy, and it's a fascinating topic. So it kind of slid under the radar, but it was really good. So if you haven't heard that, honestly, like, go back and check it out. Really, really briefly and quickly, there was this thing that entered our solar system that came from a different solar system, not a comet, not a meteor, that kind of dipped in and dipped out. And there was a lot of just very strange anomalies with this.
If I may, one of the things that stood out, and I don't actually have all the facts directly in front of me, but what I do remember, or what stood out from that show, was the fact that, like, it wasn't behaving in a traditional manner. So in other words, I think the trajectory that it followed didn't jive with our current understanding of physics, I think is where I'm going with that.
Well,
right?
That's exactly right. So, I mean, it was fascinating from a scientific and from an astrological standpoint in the fact that it was the first observed artifact from outside of our solar system that did not orbit our sun like a comet or something like that. And we were able to just capture this and observe it for a short period of time. So that was very interesting. However, it came in on an angle to the rotation of the planets, and it caught the sun's gravitation. And when it was leaving, it left at a faster. It left at a higher velocity than physics said it should have. So if it were just a rock, it would have left at X, speed. However, it left at like X plus, 0.25 or something like that. So it sped up. And there were theories that people came up with. It's like, okay, maybe there was ice on that. And as it got closer to the sun, it burnt up and it acted like a propellant, like just shooting off the back like a rocket, and that sped it up. Another legitimate theory bandied about by astronomers, physicists, people who are paid to study this, who are not, world famous podcast hosts, think that it might have been an extraterrestrial craft. Because this thing was actually quite small. It's like 400 meters, we think, by maybe 10 meters. So like cigar shaped is the classical term. So cigar shaped. And maybe it was an observation craft or a probe or something like that dipped into our solar system, monitored whatever it monitored, and then shot away. And that is so fascinating. Because at the end of the day, whether you believe that theory or not, it was behaving in a way that it should not have been behaving.
There's so many pieces there to unpack. And I want to say also, because 2020 was the year of disclosure, or it felt like, and we had all these crazy, UFO sightings and all this stuff, or at least recognition, you throw this thing on top of it and like the discussion around what this was. And it's even more bonkers just like looking at it, alone now.
Right.
There's been a lot written about it and a lot discussed and published since we did the episode.
Exactly, which is why we're talking about it again, because this popped back up. And a number of you amazing listeners sent me some of these articles. I'm like, holy smokes. So there is this theoretical physicist, Harvard professor, Avi Loeb, who wrote a new book called Extraterrestrial: The First Sign of Intelligent Life Beyond Earth. And I'm just going to read this here, so bear with me. But basically, he says, as a regular comet, Oumuamua would have had to lose about 1/10 of its mass in order to experience the excess push by the rocket effect. That's that, speeding up as it shot out of our solar system. Instead, Oumuamua showed no carbon-based molecules along its trail, no jitter or change in its spin period, as expected from cometary jets. So we've seen things do this before. It's not even doing that. So, why is it doing this? He goes on, the excess force could be explained if Oumuamua was pushed by the pressure of sunlight. That is, if it is an artificially made light sail, a thin relic of the promising technology for space exploration that was proposed as early as 1924 by Frederick Zander and is currently being developed by our civilization. This possibility would imply that Oumuamua could be a message in a bottle. So kind of a lot to break down. He's saying, yes, that idea that, it shot off when ice was melted or something. Yeah, but it's not even acting that way.
Sure.
One way to explain it is a light sail. I mean, so do you know much about these light sail?
A tiny bit. I'll tell you what I know and then correct me where I'm wrong. But, in short, it's a way of setting a craft out into space, a way to explore. And it, I believe, only rides something like light particles. Mm-hmm. And, it's not a manned craft or anything like that. But basically, it's almost like, whereas here on Earth, you can build something to kind of ride the wind because there's no wind in space. You build something to ride the light particles, I guess.
Yeah, so it's... think of it almost like a solar panel. So it's a way for it to get energy. But the way it's being designed here terrestrially, let's just say that, it like tens of square meters of this light sail would weigh less than a gram. So it is just super thin, absolutely thin. But it acts as a way to harness energy from the sun or from stars to then propel itself forward as a mechanism. He's like, look, like we know this is a technology that is achievable. We haven't quite done it yet. But if an advanced civilization were to send a probe to explore, star systems beyond their reach, this would be the way to do it. And that is a perfectly logical explanation to understand why this Oumuamua quote unquote rock was behaving the way it was. Said a Harvard physicist. I don't know. I mean,
well, the thing, so yes, obviously I'm not going to go against what he says. You know, guys, I know what you're thinking. Zach, stand up to him, right?
Right.
You know, square off in a knowledge of physics competition, a physics bowl, if you will. But I guess what I would say is this looked like, by all depictions that I understood, to be a giant rock.
Well, okay, so all the pictures you see of it are just artists rendering.
Yeah, of course, right?
So it is so small and still very far away. It's like taking a picture of a grain of sand like 200 yards away. Like it's gonna look really, really small. So we know the rough shape, and that's about it.
Sure.
So we can estimate. I mean, you could say, yeah, it's a rock. It's craggy and it's got you know, all sorts of craters and what have you. Or you could say it's like a rocket. Like we can't really definitively say one way or the other.
That's interesting, because I had always assumed that it was definitely some sort of rock-like structure, just sailing in, sailing out. But it sounds like the jury's out on that, actually.
Kinda. I mean, kind of.
Yeah. Well, and also the fact that I have to understand, like, look, you know, I cannot possibly imagine what the, you know, extraterrestrial engineers would design as a way to send something into outer space. Like, I'm only going off of what I know and what I've read.
Right.
Scientifically.
I mean, who's to say this metallic? Who's to say that it has to be, you know, cylindrical? Who's to say anything? Like, it could look like a rock, and it could actually be some super hyper intelligent microchip. I mean, you know, at the end of the day, you're just speculating. It's kind of science fiction at this point.
Absolutely.
But what this guy is saying is that, like, science fiction might be science fact. Kind of.
Well, it's a big deal. And do you know, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but like, is there anything we can do to further analyze what came in and left? Like, or are we just kind of left puzzled? You know what I'm saying?
Depends who you ask.
Okay.
So I would say mainstream, you know, quickly everyone, you know, aimed their telescopes and aimed their radars at this thing around the world. There was a collective effort to gather as much information as we could. It dipped in, it dipped out, and it kind of shot away faster than we thought it would, which is obviously the fascinating part, not to belabor the point. And then it just went away. And there's no way that we could have gotten a rocket or a satellite or anything ready to go in time, let alone the funding and all that sort of stuff to like chase after it or land on it like we did recently with an asteroid in our solar system. But it's okay. That's mainstream. But
the official story.
That's the official story. Now, ladies and gentlemen, social media is what you make of it. Okay. If your feed is full of, you know, presidents or ex-presidents talking about this or that, or the latest Q conspiracy theory, and every time you scroll through it, you just get angry and angrier, you know what? You got no one to blame but yourself because you're the one that curates that feed. So if you scroll through your feed and you see a lot of just absolutely far out UFO hypotheses, and it makes you smile and brings joy to your day, then I think you're doing something right. Like maybe myself.
I was going to say, it sounds like you, Tim.
Look, it is what you make of it. So I follow this pretty cool Instagram account. And this popped around the same time that Avi Loeb's new book and this quote that we've been talking about showed up in the mainstream news. And this Instagram feed basically pointed to this website, exopolitics.org. And to break it down as well as I can, because there's a lot to unpack here, it says basically Navy insiders corroborates secret Antarctic space fleet and mission to Oumuamua.
There we go. Now it sounded like crackpot.
I love this stuff. Like, this is, you know, it's just far out there to be like, cool. Like, I just want to believe it. And there's just enough like little bits and pieces where you're like, I don't know, maybe. I mean, probably not, to be perfectly honest, but like maybe. So long story short, this account showed, let me just read it. Okay. Former Navy SEAL and Marine Corps Special Operator revealed in an interview with a veteran UFO researcher.
Yes. Very important.
Not just a brand new researcher.
Yeah, not some rook.
Not some rookie UFO researcher. A veteran UFO researcher named Linda Moulton Howe. And this was actually posted on YouTube back in February of 2019.
Oh, wow.
Totally missed it. My bad.
Yeah.
Totally missed it.
Okay.
But the Navy SEAL gentleman says that on Antarctica, there is an enormous octagon-shaped structure. He says probably about 62 acres in size, which, by the way, is pretty big. And octagon-shaped. And it's near the Beardsmore Glacier in Antarctica, like I said. And he says, quote, Antarctica contains wonders beyond what most can comprehend, and it has ties to space technology beyond belief. Let me just stop right there. We actually did an episode on Nazi UFOs in Antarctica way early back, which was pretty fascinating and kind of touched on this idea of like secret UFO bases and secret military bases on Antarctica, which, by the way, if you want to have a secret military base or hide UFO technology, what better place on the planet could you actually have?
Exactly. Go someplace where nobody lives, where nobody's like passing over, right?
Right. And I'm not even joking about that. Like, you could theoretically dig into the ice, dig into the glacier, hollow something out, and like have a permanent base that is like almost completely camouflaged from the outside.
Right. Makes sense.
They
were thinking.
It kind of does. Okay. So he said that for the last decade, he worked with an official from the U.S. Cyber Command who is located, his office is located on the 8th floor of the National Security Agency's office in Washington, D.C. And this official he works with is responsible for conducting trade with extraterrestrial races. Not just one extraterrestrial race, multiple.
Right.
By the way, what are we trading with them? What is it that they want?
We don't have much to give, do we?
I assume they can probably find anything they want besides, like, the insides of cows or something like that.
That's about it, right? Maybe some sort of abduction stuff that gets weird.
Maybe.
But yeah, we don't have technology necessarily that we can share because
and
if they got here.
Is it raw minerals? Because they could probably just harvest other planets or asteroids or moons in the galaxy or anywhere else.
Or just take it from us, right?
Or just take it. And by the way, what are we getting in return? Like,
They're like, we're going to bestow upon you some type of technology. This is like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not radio. It's not really like video. We'll call it podcasting. Right. And you can just have this stuff.
You just have this. Trust me. It'll be big. It'll be big in 20 years. Cool.
Yeah.
Joe Rogan is. Okay. So this official that's located on the 8th floor of the NSA building told them about a secret mission to Oumuamua.
Love it.
By the way, not very secret if he's just telling these guys. Just saying. So these guys said that this was not a rock. It was not some weird thing. It was actually an old derelict space station that was floating through. Okay, Zach, look, cool. Let's play the audio. It's about a minute long. Go ahead, play the audio. This is great.
Awesome.
Did we or did we not get confirmation that our buddies landed on Oumuamua like months before anybody even knew it was out there? Yeah. Our guys were on Oumuamua, whatever the hell they call that thing. It's not a rock. It's not a rock. It's an old derelict ship. At least that's what they told us.
It was,
and we boarded it months before anybody ever knew about it.
Oh, you're talking about Oumuamua.
That's it. Yeah.
Oumuamua. Are you saying that you have first-hand information that this was an old craft?
yes, ma'am.
From who?
I can only tell you his first name is Kim. He worked for NSA, has worked for NSA for years. And just recently, in the last year, he's been put in charge of a certain department in Cyber Command. All All I know is it's on the 8th floor of the NSA building.
8th floor.
Yes, ma'am.
So, listening to that, you can tell that they tried to, mask their voices, hide their identities. If you find the video, they're actually, grayed out or blacked out or whatever, shadowed out. I don't know, Zach.
Unsettling. But the video's pretty weird, too.
It's kind of weird.
It kind of does look like two guys that could just go and say whatever they wanted because they're anonymous.
Oh, come on.
Also, if they, darkened out these people's faces, they didn't do a great job because you can kind of see...
You're not wrong.
Facial features a little bit, so...
You're not wrong.
Okay, let's break this down a little bit, though.
Yeah.
So... You have two people here that are saying they have insider knowledge that, in fact, we humans have somehow gone and visited this derelict space station.
So we knew it was coming. They launched a rocket real quick with some people on it, and they went and they checked out this old abandoned flying through the space ship, alien craft.
Right. So do you know, in terms of how close this Oumuamua came, do we as humans have the capability to even get that far?
Yeah.
Do we really?
Well, I mean,
because we've only gone so far as the moon. I guess is my point.
Sure. I mean, in theory, yes. I mean, we could travel as far as we want. I mean,
But you see where I'm coming with this, which is basically like, if I'm going to say objectively, do I believe these two guys?
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, first of all, okay, do we as humans possess the technology to travel as far as Oumuamua came, to the Earth's proximity?
Yes, we absolutely do. It would take a long time. We would absolutely have to know that it was coming. I mean, I think the logistical problem would be more like getting the timing right. Sure. And, landing on this 400-meter, hurtling through space thing.
But, the Japanese just did that.
Yeah, they did.
Which is bonkers to me, by the way. Just that by itself. So taking this whole conspiracy theory thing, casting it off, it's like we humans have landed a probe on a thing that was traveling through the galaxy. Like, that's insane. And taking samples and blast it off again. Dude, I struggle scraping ice off my car in the morning. And we can do all this crazy stuff. Like, what?
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, I mean, yeah, you can pack that ship with enough,
freeze-dried
water,
ice cream.
Freeze-dried, right? Astronaut ice cream.
Dippin' Dots.
The ice cream of the future.
Nailed it.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we're going to go to Mars in a couple of years, theoretically? Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, like a 3-month mission one way. But
that's a long time, right?
Well, it is a long time. My point is they can do that. They can do that.
I like you just say it like you know it.
Yeah, it's a piece of cake. Back of the envelope math. It's not hard. Yeah. Okay. It's weird. It's fun to laugh about. I mean, one of the other things that they said was that in Antarctica, there's this secret space command space fleet that's operating in secret. And obviously, it's a coalition of the United States, Great Britain, France, Germany, Canada, and Russia. Let's break this down piece by piece and not belabor it too much because we got a lot of other stuff to talk about. Do you believe Oumuamua was a rock or was it some sort of extraterrestrial what have you?
Well, it's tough because, again, I'm going up against a Harvard physicist here.
Yeah.
I haven't heard, besides the speculation from other folks and besides Avi Loeb talking about this, I haven't heard like conclusive evidence that in fact this was a alien probe. So I got to say, truthfully, I am, listen to this, 100% 50-50.
Well said. Okay.
You?
I want to believe that it's extraterrestrial.
Obviously, yeah.
Who doesn't? It would be so cool. Just the fact that, here, I'm gonna parse it this way. Until someone can explain definitively how a rock could speed up on its exit, I'm gonna believe it's alien.
Oh wow! So you're all in.
Until someone proves me differently. No, because look, according to smarter people than myself, it shouldn't happen that way.
Sure.
Okay. Do you believe that we launched a rocket full of some dudes who landed on a Deerlick space station that we're calling Oumuamua?
No.
Yeah, I don't either. Okay. It's a fun story, though. Okay?
Oh, believe me, nobody wants to believe it more than me. I'm telling you that right now.
I mean, this kind of goes into the category of like, Barack Obama was like trained by aliens on Mars, which is out there. Like, I'm not just like making that up on the spot. Like, that is a thing that people believe.
Mm-hmm, correct.
It's like, okay, that would be cool if he did, but I mean, his story's cool otherwise, So,
exactly right.
Whatever. Yeah. Okay. Do you believe that we have some sort of military base in Antarctica?
For the purposes of
not research, but for the purposes of flying craft. Like, it's not in Area 51 anymore. It's on the ice sheets of Antarctica.
No, I could believe we have a strategic military base there for other reasons.
Okay.
But for the purposes of hiding them because it's some weird alien technology, whatever, Space Force thing.
Yeah.
No, I don't believe that.
Oh, man.
Do you?
I want to.
Yeah, well, that's the delineator for me.
That's the pull.
We want to believe this.
Yeah, I mean, is it possible? Yeah, sure. It would break like every treaty we have, which, hey, look, we know the United States keeps its words when it comes to treaties. Yes. But I think it's possible that they have some sort of secret base there. If they had a secret base there, could they also have like new technology that's not, public? Sure.
Right. That's kind of the point.
Right.
But no, I'm with you there. So is it possible? Yes. Do I think it's likely? No. I put it around that 10 to 15% mark.
I'm going to put it around 10 to 15 and say, yeah, it's likely. So you're going to say, no, it's not likely, 10 to 15. I'm going to say, yeah, it's likely, 10 to 15.
We're big time numbers guys is what we're trying to say here. So.
But there's other wacky news out there with like potential alien life forms, right? This isn't the only one.
No, this is what drives me crazy about 2020. It's actually really hard to like keep a finger on all this stuff because there was just so much. And in fact, I was scrolling through maybe Twitter. I don't remember at this point anymore. And I saw this this article that had popped back from mid-December. And I was doing the thing where, you're kind of scrolling through and then you're like, whoa. Go back. There was this, get this, signal from Proxima Centauri back sometime, it sounds like in mid-December, where there was basically this new, let's call it a wow signal of, and if you don't know what that is, it's basically a radio transmission from another place.
I think we actually did an episode on that too.
Go check out the Wow Signal episode. It was awesome. But basically what this was is they said, look, we have detected a radio signal from a different location in the galaxy, and it appears to be something that isn't caused by a natural phenomenon, right?
And to fact check you in real time, the signal that they were referring to was actually captured back in 2019.
Sure.
And it was just like they
figured
get
it out.
reams of data, and then they were going back and studying the data, and it was like, oh, this is interesting. We need to focus on this. And I think that didn't occur until like December or something in 2020. So you're exactly right there.
Right. But what's so compelling about this is that from this direction, there are two planets that we know of, one being Proxima b, which is about 1.2 sizes of the Earth, and more importantly, in a what we'd consider a habitable zone of their particular solar system, if you want to call it that. The other from that vicinity is about 7 times larger than that of the Earth and outside of the, habitable zone. So I'm going to say if we are, playing the numbers game here, we're going to assume there's a pretty good chance it's coming from the one that's habitable.
Probably Earth size and probably habitable based on life as we understand it and chemical and molecular makeup. But and what's wild is this Proxima Centauri star. You can't see it in the night sky, but it is one of the closest stars in our galaxy.
It's only 4.2 light years away, but I mean that's next door.
That is literally that. Yes.
Usually you hear about these things, you're like, it's 752 million light years. You're like, okay, forget about it.
Cool.
Yeah, who cares?
Until we learn how to traverse wormholes or, whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter.
No, this is right
next door. And now this goes back to your, like, could we actually, like, get mankind onto a spinning rock that like flips through our solar system, yeah, we could. Could we set up a system of humans that could live long enough to travel 4.2 light years? Maybe.
Well, if we could go the speed of light, it's
if we can go the speed,
right?
which we
Or
can't.
close
I
to
mean,
it.
Einstein says we can't, so let's just leave it at that. But we can get kind of fast. We can get a percentage of that. So maybe it takes, let's just for a number, let's say 100 years. Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's a couple generations. So you need enough people to procreate. You need like some sort of, you can't pack it full of that much astronaut ice cream. So you need some sort of like hydroponics on there and some sort of water circulation and et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
This starts going into like Kim Stanley Robinson or Arthur C. Clarke kind of like sci-fi stuff. It's like, it's not impossible. Like it could potentially be done that we could like get there.
Right.
So to find a signal that is not otherwise explainable coming from this star system that we know has a habitable zone planet on it, it's like, okay, fascinating. What do we do with this?
The other thing that I think is probably worth mentioning is the fact that the megahertz that it registered on, right? It's 982.002 megahertz, I guess. And you could either look at this as compelling evidence for it being intelligent outside of this Earth, or perhaps evidence that it's from this Earth, right? Is that this is the type of signal or transmission at which satellite, spacecraft, things outside of our atmosphere communicate at.
Oh, okay. So you're saying...
you could cut it either way, I'm saying.
So what you're saying is there is a decent likelihood that this is not actually coming from the star system. This is actually potentially just some interference of some sort of satellite communication.
Well, of course it could be, but I think I'm kind of going the other way with it, which is let's play devil's advocate and say maybe that's the best megahertz to communicate out in space, and we've picked up on it, right? Because that's what the aliens are communicating at. I mean, that would be super interesting, right? But like, of course, what do they want you to think? Well, okay, yeah. I believe it was the executive director at Breakthrough Listen, which is part of SETI, said 99.9% chance likely it's human, and of course the fact that it's
not 100%. It's not 100%.
Exactly.
It's not. You're telling me there's a chance.
Well, and also it's just this one person's opinion, so let's not.
Well, it's not just one person's opinion exactly. It's like, look, they get reams and reams and reams of data every single day, and they are able to discount all of it. By discount, I mean, it's explainable. It's the static from the universe. It's a quasar. It's, someone's ham radio. It's the International Space Station. Here's something where they're like, well, we can't completely eliminate all those other options. So maybe. And the fact that it's pointed at a nearby star that we're kind of interested in, right?
That's exactly it. So to me, it's kind of like, okay, well, it could be terrestrial because it's at a megahertz that we're familiar with and communicate with. It could also be extraterrestrial because it's coming from a place that could be habitable and also perhaps communicating at a frequency in which it's probably optimal to communicate in space.
Sure.
And this is one of the most compelling transmissions from outer space. Probably the one that's most next comparable is the WOW signal from 1977. So a lot of very, 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 very interesting stuff here.
That is so fascinating.
And it could be extraterrestrial in nature.
Yeah, it could. I mean, again, the likelihood, in all honesty, is very small, but it could be, which is so wild. How do you even decode something from a different life form, It goes back to that. Like, the only way to communicate would have to be with math, right? I mean,
yeah, because it wouldn't be the English language, of course, right? So, or symbols maybe, but then even then that doesn't help. We look at hieroglyphics here, half the stuff we can't understand. So I don't know.
Would you would it be worth going to them? I mean, maybe it's a ruse. Maybe it's like maybe they are not friendly. I mean, well, you go back to Stephen Hawking's whole idea. It's like we should not try to communicate, and we should not try to announce our place in the universe because look at the best example he can think of is terrestrial, of course, and it's like when the Europeans, Christopher Columbus, etc., came over to the Americas. Look what they did. It was awful. Yeah, it was absolutely awful. Genocide. And it's like we don't necessarily want to invite other life forms to our planet because we have no idea if their intentions are good or not.
Well, I'm not going to, put my word against Stephen Hawking's, but I will say
you do that every single day. What are you talking about?
I actually do it for my job. But I also like to think, and I've heard this argument before, that like if these aliens are indeed so much more scientifically advanced, then perhaps they're also more benevolent because they should have achieved some higher level of consciousness. In fact, maybe they understand it's better to avoid conflict altogether and love one another.
Yeah, so. Or not. Maybe they're just highly advanced and they need more raw minerals.
Yeah, they want some plasma
to build
something.
some sort of a Dyson sphere. Yeah. And they're just going to come to Earth and harvest it for all the, iron and ore and whatever and take it back there. And they're just like killing us all like we're a tiny little ant hive or something like that.
No, it could happen too.
Like, come on.
50-50.
A great man once said 50-50.
Nice.
But I mean that's not even it. That's not even it in the universe, in the alien universe and weirdness.
Plenty more.
Friend of the pod.
Yes, he actually is a friend of the show. Jeremy Corbell, we want you on, buddy.
Come on, get on the show.
Like seriously, we were trying to make this happen, and you said you do it, and so we got to figure all this out.
Well, we'll get there. 2021, it's all gonna happen. Jeremy Corbell on his Instagram feed, real early. I think it was like New Year's Day or the day after New Year's.
Something like that, yeah.
He posted a picture of him that looks like in like a champagne room or something like that. It's a VIP room. I don't know. But he's sitting there just all classy, scrolling through his phone, whatever. And that wasn't the interesting part. The interesting part was what he wrote on Instagram underneath it. He said, and let me just read this here. 2021 will help you understand what Bob Lazar and George Knapp told you back in 1989. There's a bunch coming. Don't be a moron. Notice what fraudsters continue to propagate. Look what's come true since Bob Lazar told you. Hashtag UFO. Hashtag Bob Lazar. Hashtag Element 115. Zach, what do you make of Jeremy Corbell's cryptic message? And also, why should we even listen to Jeremy Corbell?
It's hard to make sense of this because it's just like sprinkling some breadcrumbs, leading you to think or wonder what's he referring to in and amongst all of this, UFO type news.
But for those who don't know Jeremy Corbell, what's the high level?
He's an artist. He's a filmmaker. He's done a bunch of compelling movies about, I think alien implants. I think it was a couple years ago that movie came out. Also Skinwalker Ranch.
Right.
Of course, Bob Lazar. Awesome movie on Netflix. So he is curious about UFOs, extraterrestrial life, but at the end of the day, he's really a filmmaker. And
he's a filmmaker, and he gets access to things and to people who are traditionally very hard to get access to. Like Bob Lazar was just completely silent for like 30 years until Jeremy Corbell was like, hey, let me do a movie, which is, setting aside whether or not Bob Lazar is telling the truth or Jeremy Corbell is just trying to sell a product to Netflix, that doesn't matter. What is interesting is that he's able to get this access and he's able to get people to tell their story. Right. And it is a compelling story. And at the end of the day, like, I kind of believe the Bob Lazar story, or at least bits and pieces. Like he seems like a very credible person. Right. So Jeremy Corbell says, 2021, baby. Buckle up, something's happening, right?
Disclosure, right?
What do you think? So potentially, short of everyone's favorite Blink-182
To the Stars
musician.
Academy and all that.
Right. Short of that, like, this guy has his finger on the pulse of the ufology community. Like, do you take him at his word? Like, what's he getting at here? What do you think?
Well, it's frustrating because you can't have it both ways. Like, if you take him at his word, there's some crazy stuff that we'll find out about in 2021. If you don't take him at his word, then either he's lying or it's just weird or something else. And I hate both. So for me, I'm like, for the sake of the show and just for the sake of, humanity, it'd be interesting to learn more about whatever it is in 2021 that we're going to find out about. But I guess, I don't know. Where do you come down?
Okay, well, here's the thing, dude. Like, when President Trump signed the most recent COVID-19 bill, there was a clause that was slipped into it by Senator Marco Rubio of Florida, which said that from the time of signing, they had 180 days, meaning the Pentagon and the CIA, had 180 days to start disclosing what they knew about UAP. UAP meaning, unidentified aerial phenomenon, modern version of UFO. So theoretically, like, this stuff could start coming out. Like, they could very easily, redact or just not tell them, which is probably the most likely. But like this, like, if the trend continues and based on the legislation and what they're supposed to do, like, 2021 might actually be even crazier in the UFO and alien world than 2021 was, or 2020 was.
Well, in that case, then too, it's almost as if we'll learn more, we'll understand more, and 2021 is the year that it kind of maybe all starts to make sense. Where you have, like, of course you have Roswell, and then of course you have the WOW signal, and then of course you have the Fravor stuff, right? The Tic Tacs, all these different sightings, all these different things coming to a head, and finally some sort of explanation. Maybe not one unified, consistent storyline, but perhaps we'll have better understanding of all those different kind of weird historical anomalies. Right?
Yeah. I mean, okay, so all true, all 100%. The thing I quibble with the most about this Instagram post is that it is written exactly like a QAnon drop. And I don't know if that's intentional or not, but it's like, there's a bunch coming. Don't be a moron. Notice what the fraudsters have said and continue to propagate. Look what's come true since XYZ. Like, you just change a couple names and you put that into a Q drop and add like a hashtag, follow the white rabbit kind of thing. And it is exactly the same thing, which is just more frustrating than I want to believe. Yeah. So I don't know where to come down to this. If I were to be perfectly honest, I don't necessarily believe that Jeremy Corbell knows a whole lot more than anyone else, but he probably knows more than some.
Well, I think compared to the average person like you or me, he certainly has access to people that might know more information about this kind of stuff. And so therefore, I think it lends some credence or credibility to what he's saying.
Well, then just tell us.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I could stop being weird about it. Just say something.
Yeah.
Say, like, on March 18th, we are going to find out truth about Oumuamua. Period.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, then we can judge whether you're telling the truth or not.
Right.
Okay, so moving on. Unless you got more to add on that.
No, I don't think so. Well, it's hard to say exactly, what's going on there with Mr. Corbell, but apparently he knows more than us. And I will say, Tim, just to wrap things up here in a little bit of brevity, I think, in an otherwise really difficult couple of weeks for everybody.
Yes.
We got an email from, I think it was listener Dan, who had sent us this Storm Area 51.
Obviously.
Do you remember? I think it was last year, wasn't it?
Yeah. Again, Jeremy Corbell was out there. It all started because of the Bob Lazar documentary. Bob Lazar said that he was, part of the Area 51. There's alien craft, and they're trying to reverse engineer him. And some kid in his dorm room was like, started a Facebook group like, we're going to storm Area 51. We're going to get the aliens out. We're going to figure this all out. And it all kind of fizzled.
Right. So same bunch of people looked at the really sad and unfortunate events that transpired at the Capitol around the electoral college certification process and said, well, if it's that easy to get in the Capitol, how hard could it be to get into Area 51? Let's all storm Area 51, right?
If we can get a group of people, if we can get a couple hundred people to just storm into the United States Capitol, and I don't mean to make light of that, but
exactly.
How hard is it to get into Area 51? Hopefully the security is a little bit better.
Yeah.
Hopefully that, they actually don't open the door and like let them in and take selfies with the people that are storming the building.
Terrible. But
that's a whole episode in and of itself that quite
right.
honestly we won't do because I don't want to. But like why not?
So
let's take that energy, maybe not the same exact energy, but let's take that passion, move it out to the desert in Nevada. Mm-hmm. Okay, by the way, I'm not advocating anyone, for the record, I am not actually advocating anyone, break federal law and storm a military base, because that's a bad idea.
Yes.
But how hard could it be?
There are some rumors floating around out there about that idea, and I guess, you know what? Let's not do it, but it's kind of funny. Again,
it's
just
funny to joke about.
Yeah. Haha, let's think about it.
Free those aliens.
And by the way, if we're going to be specific, don't just go to Area 51.
Yeah.
You got to go to S4, baby.
It's a big base.
There's a hangar out there.
It's blended into the side of a mountain.
Yes.
Or Antarctica. Storm Antarctica. Storm the bases in Antarctica.
No, that we're behind.
Yes.
Crackpot Enterprises.
100%. We will help fund the expedition to storm the secret bases in Antarctica. We can't fund it fully, but we'll talk to our CEO, Warren Buffett, see if he can throw a little cash behind the project.
Absolutely. Allegedly. I think we're safe now.
Totally. All right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. These are always kind of fun and light, and I enjoy doing them. So we'll keep doing them, right?
Yes, we will.
All right. Hey, tell your friends, tell your neighbors about our podcast. Hit that like, hit that subscribe button there so you can get some more. Head on over to patreon.com/crackpot podcast to get our episode piped into your podcast machine every single week if you haven't already. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your local astrophysicist about our podcast, and we will see you next week.
Thanks, everybody.